Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for... Let's get the kit off. Not that kit, behave yourselves. You wouldn't like what you saw anyway. Silence. Oh, right, I've had a funny day. I got woken up really silly early this morning, banging and crashing next door. Don't know whether they'd just come home from work or getting up to go to work. They do odd shifts, it's fair enough, and sometimes it's difficult to do your bathroom routine silently, so I understand. But the trouble is, there is a time of night where if I get disturbed, I'm not going to get back to sleep. So anyway, I decided to go and have a sit in the garden. The garden that's had no rain now for about 2 months, I think. And there's things starting to keel over in the garden, and I'm just letting them go. I'm not going to start the gut watering the garden situation, because once you start, you've got to keep it up with the hose and all that sort of stuff. And for the sort of plants I'd be keeping alive, it's not worth the wasted water, really. I've got my bonsai and some things in tubs that, you know, mean something to me, so I'm keeping them going. But I poured myself a glass of wine and had a sit in the garden. And I dozed very, very quickly because I'm obviously tired. Nearly dropped my glass. That wouldn't have been nice. That's my last posh glass for a start. I'd have to start using cheap glasses. There's something about a decent glass with your wine in that makes it nicer. I don't understand the principle, but it just does. You know, you pour a fine quality wine in a plastic cup and see what it tastes like. Needs to be in a good glass. Anyway, I decided to have a sit down in the comfy chair a bit earlier than normal, fell sound asleep, and it's now 4:15 and I've just woken up and realised that I hadn't filmed anything today. And I thought to myself, I've got to get myself away from this. It's a sort of pressure to film something every day, and when it's sometimes I'm just making up something just to do a video. That thing has just got to stop. If there isn't something specific, then just miss a day. It's just how it'll have to be. I can't think of new things all the time. But what I did think of, just standing here looking, was that there's some stuff here that's not going to be here when we get to the 8th. And my everything in bloom on the 8th, therefore can't include them. So I thought we'll do an interim everything in bloom. And although it's got nothing to do with the 8th, that's what's getting filmed today. And we'll have a chat about them as we go round. I'm not going to do pop-ups though, that's too much effort. Right, so if we start down here, get down there, it's getting up again. We've got our Masdevallia, something page, I can't remember. But that's a first time bloomer for me. I know it's got Veitchiana in it, and I think the Dracula is called Dracula Raven. But it's got Vampira in it, which is almost black. So it's a combination of a nice bright orange and something that's almost black that gives it that colour. But that's as good as it gets as far as opening is concerned. It's one that's best viewed from below. So it hangs downwards and gets viewed from below. Got our little hybrid Masdevallia. That's still looking nice. This hasn't bloomed for a very, very long time. And then suddenly it sticks up a couple of spikes. So that was nice. And then tucked up the back there we've got our, he says nearly overbalancing, we've got our Masdevallia ignea, which is one of the finest coloured Masdevallias, although in my book I'm not so keen on the shape. To me, this is Masdevallia shape with the 3 pointy bits. Yeah, the kite orchid as it's nicknamed. Well, that would be a very strange kite, that shape, wouldn't it? So that's that. There's a Restrepia in bloom back there, but I can't get in there at the moment. I'm not getting plants out. Right, coming up here, here's one that may well not be still with us on the 8th. We may have one bloom left. The blooms are starting to go. And given that this set here opened very close together, there's two going, they'll be gone soon, but then this one opened an awful lot later. So we may just have one by the time we get to the appropriate date. The Dendrobium lindleyi has got about another day and all the blooms will be gone. I shall trim the spikes off, and that needs to come back into growth mode because I don't think at the moment there is any signs of new growths. No, not one. And yet the Jenkinsii is pushing on nicely. There are some good new growths coming. So that's the end of its days. And given that I wasn't even expecting it to bloom, I was pleased with those days. Very pleased. We've got the Dendrobium friedrichsianum, Hannah, that's just opening. You know, that's literally only started in the last couple of days. We've got buds still to come and some that are way off blooming yet. So this will still be there, definitely. This you got to get back to appreciate this one. This is a lot of blooms on a lot of plant. So that's that one. And then we've got our Hercoglossum round here. Now this is starting to drop blooms at quite a rate now. Yeah, we've got quite a few going over as we go round. But there's still buds opening and there's still buds that haven't opened. So this will still be with us, but it's starting not to look good. The reason it's not looking good is because I'm not going round taking the dead blooms off. So you're getting a look about it that looks as though it's going over, when in fact it's far from it. But that's a tidying up thing that needs doing, rather than anything else. They do make the plant look untidy. And then tucked up in there we've got our epidendrum, with its lovely orange. Lousy plant, looks really tatty, but the blooms are good. So it remains here simply because the blooms are good. Now, it's unlikely to get that far that fast, but this brassica spike here could possibly be open by the 8th, but I don't think it will be. And there's another brassica up here, yeah, up here. That's the Shelob Tolkien. That won't be open, that's a long way off. Will our single hibiki bloom still be with us? That was recently repotted. I'm waiting to see that pot fill with roots. Coming soon, we hope. Then up in the Cattleya ranks, we've got several that may or may not still be with us. The apple blossom's been open some time now. I don't remember how long it lasted before, but the problem with this is that, well, it's the same problem with most blooms. They will last longer if it's cool, and it's not. So I'm losing the life on some of my blooms because of this weather. It's happened 2 years on the trot now. 2 years we've had a hot, dry spring and early summer. In some cases classed as a heat wave. It's not a heat wave this year, but in here, what the temperature outside doesn't make a lot of difference. It's the intensity of the sun through the glass, even with the shade netting. And then we've got this one. I absolutely adore this little Cattleya. It's just, those colours are just wonderful. So hopefully that'll still be with us because it's still opening blooms. And then we've got the newly opened Dialalia. New name as well. That's looking nice. But, we've still got another bud to open, so that'll still be with us, I'm sure. The Laelia purpurata, I haven't got a clue how long that's going to last, because this is its first blooming, so I really don't know. Hopefully that will still be there, but it's looking nice. Massive blooms on that, absolutely huge. That's it with the Cattleyas. As far as the Tolumnias are concerned, we're going to be thinning right out now. The little Europhila up here, it's got a good little cluster of buds on this branch. It's not a spike, it's branched. Some idiot broke the spike. It's only got one bloom open at the moment, but it's got buds to come. So that will look better down the road than it does now. Then coming down here, Tolumnia wise, this is not going to be with us much longer. These are branches and there are no more. These blooms have been around as a while as well. So I don't think this one's going to be with us much longer. Days, I would say. And that's going to apply to this one as well, which this is a first time bloomer. That has so dramatically changed colour. When it first opened it was red, and then it went through deep pink into paler pink, and now it's got a purple tinge to it, which tells me the blooms are about to go. But no branches on the spike, not a hint of a branch on that one, so that's coming to its end. And this one over here, which is Tolumnia peach, I believe, this spike's now gone, no more branches, so that can come off. And then these are the last few blooms. This has been in bloom since December, January time, so I'm not going to complain. When this one goes, this really has earned its keep, exceptionally so. Lovely colour combinations, variable markings, sometimes spots, like this one, and sometimes none. And then you get a nice even peach colour, and then you get a banded peach colour. It varies quite a bit, but that's coming to its end, and then it needs to concentrate on growing. Down there on the ground, about to burst forth, is Odontoglossum naevium. Now those blooms on that spike, hotly followed by that one, which I need to get this up off the floor actually. Let's do it now, because otherwise those blooms are touching the moss and this one's practically touching the floor, so we'll get this up. It'll remind me to do something with it. But these are opening once I see the little tassely bit showing, so chances are tomorrow or the next day this spike will be open. This might have looked better staked, but there's no point staking it now because the blooms will all be upside down. They've achieved their aspect at that angle, so that's how they now need to open. And then that one's caught up. I don't think that one's going to be far behind, so that's an odd one. What else have we got going on? Blah, 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 blah. Right, up here, this is Farmer crossed with Griffithianum. I daren't touch it because that lot will just go straight on the floor. So that one's finished now, so that's gone. That's probably going to bloom again later in the year, but not for a bit. And then we've got our new plant, basically. I haven't had this one long, and this is I always forget the first one. It begins with an E, EX or something like that. Eximium crossed with rhodostictum. Rhodostictum I know well, and personally I can see the rhodostictum in those blooms. It's just the wings. Rhodostictum to me, when you hold it up like this, it looks like a bird taking off, trying to gain lift. Gorgeous colours on that. Plenty of blooms left, incredibly long lasting. It was in bloom when I got it, so I don't know how long it's going to last, but I suspect quite a bit longer. This one here opened since I got it, so these are the newest two blooms, these two, so we shall see on that one. And up here, I don't know, I still wouldn't like to say how long it's going to be before this brassia starts opening. I would suggest those are the largest blooms, so that spike is probably going to be the first one to open. I suspect that will be in bloom on the 8th, so that'll be like a new one, but I'm sure we'll have seen it beforehand. So sometimes I come out here and I think there's not a lot going on, and then when I reconsider, there is actually quite a bit going on, I suppose. I work on somewhere between, depending on the time of year, normally around 5%, sometimes heading to 10% of my total number of orchids that are in bloom at any one point in time. Now that's not always true. I mean, I've cut down a hell of a lot of the orchids. As you know, we had a night of the long knives, and there's still some in here that I don't strictly speaking own because they were bid on by other people. They've still got to go. But that's only half a dozen or so. It's not like there'll be a huge space where they were. It's not going to be that bad. Oh, we forgot Kaneko. Oh, That's good. It actually lives right in front of my nose, and yet I forgot it. This is coming into bloom again. This had a little gap, and it's now coming back with clusters in quite a few places, so it's coming back into bloom. The individual blooms last a fair time. I wouldn't say they're short-lived, but they're not a patch on the Latorias, obviously. Yeah. So yeah, I think I've got about 170 orchids now, ish, maybe 175. You know, so if you take 10% of that, and then somewhere between 5%, half of that, and 10% is roughly what's in bloom. And if I just count now physically by numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, counting the Restrepia, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17. Well, we got a new one. Go on, just trying to make me a liar, haven't you? This is a Tolumnia just opening up here. See if I can get that somewhere where we can see it. I have to stop wobbling. Oh, it's not properly open yet. Oh, that's a dark one. So where did we get to? 17. So that would be classed as 18 then. Oh, look at the depth of colour on that. It's almost black. What the hell is that then? Oh, it's all in the name, you know. Charac Flyer, Black Magic. Well, there we go then. And it is almost black. So I think that might have taken us to 17 or 18, I lost count. But yeah, as I said, 10% of 170. So working on that 10% rule. And it's sometimes of the year it's less than that. And then at other times of the year we'll get a bit of a peak and it'll be a bit more. Because somebody once asked me as a very serious question, how many orchids do I think you need to have something in bloom all the time? Well, it's the same old answer, isn't it? How long's a bit of string? What type of orchids are we talking about? Yeah? Because if you had a selection of Latoria Dendrobiums with, say, some Cuthbertsonii thrown in, you could probably get away with no more than a dozen and you'd have something in bloom all the time because the blooms last so long. So there would be lots of overlapping going on. But you can have 1,000 orchids, but if they only last 10 to 12 days each, you're going to have gaps. It's geared up to how long do they last. Which is why in my mind, when I'm buying orchids now, they've either got to be very, very special on the appearance and preferably fragrance front to actually justify their existence without the longevity. Quite honestly, I like those that last a bit. You put all the time and effort into getting the flipping things to grow and do okay and all that sort of stuff, you know. And then they need to justify their existence and their space by actually putting on a show that lasts a while. So that's my theory. Right, so there we go. It's time to think about getting something to eat, I think, and then fall asleep in the chair again, I expect. But yeah, so a quick look round, just the blooms this time. Some going rapidly. Some taking their time but still going nonetheless, and some to come soon, you know, and those that are going to be around for a while. So a bit of a variety, and yeah, I mean that's a plant and a half, that one, and it's still got blooms to come. It's going to look good for a while, but you've got to get back from it. Yeah, the blooms do warrant close viewing. They are very attractive. Very attractive, but the overall appearance is really the whole plant in this case, and we're not getting the whole plant in now because there's still loads of it up there. It's a large, mature, I would say, specimen sized plant, you know. Somebody said that, how do you know when you've reached a specimen sized plant? And the answer is that you've never seen one bigger. That's part of it. All the shows you've been to, oh, I've never seen one as big as that. Some of its size But a lot of it is that as good as it gets for that plant? Because in theory an orchid will just keep growing forever, but they don't, do they? Because older parts start to die back, replaced by newer parts. So there is probably a limit to an individual species. We can't really discuss hybrids because they're so muddled up in their genes, it's difficult to tell. But with species, you know, there is a limit. And the limit will be based on how many new growths it can produce in a year and what its rate of loss is out the back end of the plant. Canes that just die off. Yeah? So that's where you're at. And this one is in balance at the moment. The old canes round the back, which won't, they're not going to drop off, but they will shrivel to silly looking little sticks. But because there is human intervention, I can trim those off. And the number coming off will be less than the new ones. So it's still getting bigger. Yeah, it's the number of canes keeps increasing. But there will be a limit, you know, where the number coming off the back end is roughly the same as the new ones coming out the front end. Now that's as big as it's going to get then, or as big as it can be managed in my case. Canes don't necessarily grow any longer, but you know, it's the number of them and the directions they take. As I said, I've got some up here from last year. These are last year's growth, and even though they're long, they've decided not to flop over. They've decided to stay up there, sticking up, which now makes them a flipping nuisance. The previous lot all nicely hung down. But that's how it goes. Can't really control that sort of stuff. So let's all let our dogs out at once and let them bark at each other. Wonderful. Anyway, that'll do for today. I'm thinking food now, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.